Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you my favorite weird news stories of the past few days. Starting us off today, the CEO of a southeastern Indiana ski resort is the only Hoosier lawmaker to vote against a proposed state law prohibiting businesses from requiring their workers to be microchipped as a condition of employment. State Senator Chip Perfect, R. Lawrenceburg, said Wednesday during a meeting of the Senate Pensions and Labor Committee that he didn't think Indiana should be amongst the first states to adopt such a restriction when no one knows how the technology might develop. For those of you that read 1984, I think you will know not positively. You know, microchipping is scary. House Bill 1143, which last month unanimously was approved by the Indiana House, bars employers from requiring the implantation of any identity or tracking device on their workers unless the workers voluntarily consent to having something like that put into their bodies. There are currently no employers in the United States that mandate employees have a device implanted or otherwise incorporated into their bodies as a condition of employment, according to the Nonpartisan Legislative Services Agency. State Senator John Ford, Arter Hot, the sponsor, noted that one company in Wisconsin and several in Sweden are using rice-sized microchips in their employees' hands on a voluntary basis. And he's concerned about the trend coming to the Hoosier State. Perfect cautioned, however, that if Ford's proposal becomes a law, it's unlikely that any Indiana company would implement this even voluntary chipping program, since the company would have had to maintain two systems for employment timekeeping, door access, vending machine sales, and everything else that the microchips could be used for. Technology would not advance because they'd have to hold on to the old ways. Ford insisted he isn't trying to hold companies back. He simply wants to ensure Hoosier workers are protected from the unwarranted invasions of their privacy. I'm just trying to put on some regulations so that people can maintain their freedom and not be required to microchip their hands. The committee voted 9-1 to forward the legislation to the full Senate. Chamber vote will happen next week, which could advance it to the Republican Governor Eric Holcomb to be signed into law or voted. This isn't the first time that Perfect's position on a labor issue has raised eyebrows in the State House. Last year, he filed legislation seeking to entirely eliminate Indiana's work permit requirements for work hour restrictions for 16 and 17-year-old students, including the 300 to 400 children Perfect employs each winter. the perfect north slopes. Senate Bill 342 failed to advance during the 2019 General Assembly, but a similar Senate Bill 409, expanding legal work hours and eliminating rest breaks for employees under the age of 18 last week, has been approved by the Senate. So, what do we think about these bills? What do we think about microchipping employees? Are we a little bit concerned about it going back to 1984 there? Or, any dystopian, futuristic film, really. Like there was that one with Domhnall Gleeson. I can't remember what it's called, but it's, I think it's scary, to microchip. Why do you need to know my exact whereabouts and my, this and that all the time? It's dehumanizing, it is dehumanizing. I found another article talking about that and why. You may have heard of this latest approach to insert microchips into employees for authenticity, I suppose, of employees. While this approach has worked wonders in the pet community, absolutely good stuff, to find them when they get lost. Microchips as a business environment is not only dehumanizing, it's also pointless. It's true, passwords are not sufficient to defend your network. This has been established. I think we've all had to change our passwords for fear of fraud at least once, However, it's absurd to think that the human embedded option, a code, a private key embedded in an RFID chip, the same one you use to access your gym, should be inserted into your skin. There are plenty of ways that our society is shifting, frighteningly Orwellian, but just because something seems like what you might see in a dystopian thriller doesn't mean it should become a practical reality. It's not practical to be branded like cattle yet, and or ever. And embedding a subdermal chip basically turns you into a smart card. One that you can't lose, can't be stolen. But before you roll up your sleeves, let's talk about this. Your employer should not have rights to your body. If you go to a job interview that's not for the X-Men, your employer should not be requiring that you get chipped to streamline business opportunities. Also, what if you get fired? It won't ever really be secure. They're easy to copy and clone. It's not a problem when it comes to pets because very little people care that much about that. If it's not your pet, I suppose you wouldn't care as much. It's hard to replace a chip if it's cloned and if it's already in your body. You already have biometric capabilities. You already have thumbprints. I don't know why we need that. The employers do not always have your best interest in mind. Let's just be aware of that. Turning you into a cyborg is not for you, it's for them. Employer self-interest is something that we can definitely count on. And it's a loss of your body autonomy, right? Yeah, I'm not sold on this one. When we return, we are going to go into Papa John's. when we return.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about the ethics of microchipping, of which I think there are none. And now we're gonna take a switch into Papa John's CEO, John Schnatter, who tried to clarify his wild statement that implied that he ate more than one whole pie a day for a month, criticizing the pizza giant he once controlled. Back in November, Schnatter told WDRB, Fox affiliate in Louisville, Kentucky, that he had over 40 pizzas in the last 30 days and concluded that Papa John's is not the same pizza since his ouster. This week, however, on the H3 podcast, Schnatter said the verb had wasn't the same as eaten. Didn't say I'd eaten 40 pizzas in 30 days. I said I'd had 40 pizzas in 30 days. So the host obviously pushed back, accusing Schnatter of playing fast and loose with his pizza lingo. Hold on. We're going to split hairs here? When I said I had a pizza, that means I ate it, Klein said. Schnatter pulled himself out a picture of pizza and said had usually means inspecting or eating a part of it. When I said I had a pizza, it means I'm inspecting. Not eating every pizza, I'm eating the parts of pizzas. This is getting very specific. He said he now eats about 8 or 9 slices a week, but he used to go for 12 to 15 slices a week. So he's gone down significantly since his departure. I guess he accredits this to his departure being the end of those sweet, sweet, tasty Zaz. He thinks that they were much better when he was around, and the quality has gone downhill since he departed. Has anyone noticed a significant decline in Papa John's? Has anyone noticed, a difference in quality? No? Anyone at all? Anyone at all? Any difference? Taste and quality? Since the departure. If you don't know, Schnatter had to step down as CEO, and he left the board following reports that he uttered a racial slur during a conference call. He said his former company has failed to keep up with its longtime slogan, better ingredients, better pizza. He vowed in his November interview that he would see a day of reckoning and that board members who forced him out would have to pay up. Now let's talk a little bit about that forcing out. So he agreed to leave the board as part of a settlement agreement with the company, signaling the end to an acrimonious battle for control over the world's third largest pizza delivery chain. The company said in a filing on Tuesday that it would have to cooperate with Schnatter to find a mutually acceptable independent director who would not be affiliated with the hedge fund Starboard Schnatter. Schneider, who owns about 30% of the company's shares, would resign from the board if the independent director is appointed before 2019 annual stockholder meeting, he said. Schneider also agreed to dismiss 2 lawsuits, one against the company in the Delaware Chancery Court without prejudice, and another in Jefferson County, Kentucky, related to the sublease agreement with prejudice. The company said early last month, Papa John snubbed an investment offer from Schneider and instead accepted an investment of up to $250 million from Starboard in return for nearly 10% for a 10% stake, while naming the hedge fund's chief executive officer, Jeffrey Smith, as its chairman. Schneider had filed several lawsuits against the company in bid to regain control, the control that he lost after uttering a racial slur in a conference call, mind you. Remember that? So he uttered a racial slur, felt he was forced to step down, and decided that that was unfair and he needed to regain control. I think you can guess how I feel about that. I think you made a mistake. You did a racist thing. Stop. Leave it. Don't. You know? You did it bad. He stepped down as the company's chief executive after drawing criticism for comments that he made against the NFL leadership. Yeah, so not great for him. Not great for him. The bad press took a toll on the company. Not great for the company, which said that its North American same-store sales fell by 7.3% during the scandal. That's a significant loss in the company's gains. So obviously they had to do something about that. You definitely need to get rid of the guy yelling racial slurs about the NFL, Papa John's, which expects lagging sales in the first half of the year, blamed the negative publicity for faltering sales and pushed to improve its public image by removing Schneider's image from promotional materials and pizza boxes. So the angry guy gets on, the angry guy that's fired for saying racist things gets on a podcast to talk about how the pizzas have now diminished in quality because of his of him being gone. I'm going to be completely honest. I feel that the CEO has very little to do with the quality of pizzas in an overall massive chain like Papa John's. I don't think that they decided, yay, we can be lax now. And I think that for him to say that is a little bit ridiculous. Though I do love the idea of a little bit of a fight on a podcast, trying to determine the semantics of pizza eating. There is nothing more grown-up frat boy than that to me. Like how do we properly talk about that? We got to talk about our pizza language, guys. Got to talk about our pizza language. So I think that's it for our pizza news. Unless people have more to say about pizza news. It'd be nice if we could have some call-ins. I want to hear your thoughts on these things. When we return, another quote-unquote slur as a university professor compares "okay boomer" to an awful slur.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about CEO from Papa John's saying a racial slur, having to step down, and then accusing Papa John's of falling in quality since his departure that he made in disgrace. And now, a University of Oklahoma professor has apologized after saying "okay boomer" is the same as saying the N-word. A university student's newspaper reported. When a student made the comment on Tuesday that journalists must keep up with younger generations, the professor said that was the equivalent of saying "okay boomer" to him. The OU Daily reported, "Calling someone a boomer is like calling someone the N-word," the professor said, according to the paper, which said some of its staffers were in class and witnessed the exchange. The professor apologized in an email to students on Tuesday evening. "I realized the word was hurtful." He did actually say the word. I'm not saying it because, obviously. "I realized the word was hurtful and infuses the racial divisions of our country, past and present," the professor wrote, according to the paper. Use of the word is inappropriate in any, and especially an educational setting. CNN has reached out to the professor for comment, but has not heard back. The university's interim president, Joseph Haraz Jr., condemned the comparison earlier in the day, saying, the professor's comments are protected by the First Amendment and academic freedom. His comment and word choice are fundamentally offensive and wrong. The use of the most offensive word by a person in a position of authority hurts and minimizes those in the classroom and beyond, Haraz said. The term "okay boomer," a viral meme amongst millennials and Gen X's, exploded last year on the TikTok social media app, where countless mocking videos are calling what young people perceive as an out-of-touch boomers and their patronizing opinions. This is a growing problem. We are constantly, our generation and beyond is getting criticized for being lazy and overly consumerist, and that's the reason that we're having so much trouble. However, studies have shown time and time again that millennials aren't as well off as their parents at the same age. Their net worth is lower, and they're not making more money. The individual earnings for young workers have remained mostly flat over the past 50 years. Flat. So they're not increasing, even with inflation, like they should be, finds several researchers in a 2019 report. This is especially true with people that have some college or less. Annual earnings were lower than their counterparts in prior generations. Millennial workers with the same college education make about $36,000 a year, lower than the $38,900 early boomer workers made at the same age in 1982. So that was, they made $38,900 in 1982, and now in 2018, 36. Hundo. Yeah. So the pattern is similar for young adults who never attended college. Millennials with at least a bachelor degree earn 56, but the same college educators earned, of Gen Xers earned in 2001. So it, again, has not increased with inflation. The growing gap by education is even more apparent when looking at the annual household income. In 2018, households headed by millennials with bachelor degrees or more earned about $105. However, with some college, $62,000. So a huge gap. And the gap was just less significant for prior generations. So the difference in this age group is 43, and the difference for boomers was 41. Millennials also tend to owe more due to the very expensive college education. Median amount of debt was nearly 50% greater for millennials, with student debt being on average $19,000 than for Gen X, which was about $12,000. If anyone tells you you don't need to get a college degree, ignore that advice. Greatest separation between you and your wealth is having a college degree, says Ramit Sethi in his book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Don't buy the typical advice that everyone seems to be throwing around these days, saying college loans are the worst thing on earth. They're not. It doesn't mean you should borrow recklessly, but you should get it. Picking a college works for you and your budget. Look at the degree you're getting and what it's worth in the future. Absolutely true with that specifically. However, what I will personally caution people, I have 2 degrees, but they are in the arts, which is very undervalued in our society. And I make well below the poverty line. I am a millennial generation. And I know that this is only going to get worse for Gen Zers. So I would recommend, if you like the arts, you don't need to get a degree. Regardless, you will be earning the same amount of money. Unfortunately, in our society, when I lived in the UK, this was quite different. They value it there. They respect it. It's a respectable part of culture. So I definitely earned more there. However, in North America, it's very undervalued. So, maybe skip the student loans for that one. But in this, if you're getting a medical degree, obviously, by all means, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. It will translate. I'd rather see you spend a couple of $100,000 on something like a medical degree than even half of that on a degree that won't translate into future earnings, i.e. an arts degree. To get an idea of what your degree might be worth, research different careers that might lead to and what they'll pay, and then choose your major thinking about future job market. Make sure that your degree will be translatable. In other words, make sure it's not something that the robots can take from you, right? Sneaky robots coming in here, taking the jobs, right? Yeah. This one hits home for me. The boomers not fully understanding the gap that we have, that they didn't have to suffer from. So, boomers, don't be so sensitive about the okay boomer thing. And, have a little sympathy for us, and we'll have a little sympathy for you. That's all we ask. When we come back, some drunk flight stories. A couple of different drunk flight stories. Who doesn't love a drunk flight story? We're going to go to those when we return from the break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about boomers comparing boomer to the N-word. I can't believe I just said that sentence. Now that we're back, a British man is facing jail time after harassing a crew and passengers on board a flight and eating his mobile phone, causing the plane to be diverted. Matthew Flaherty was on an EasyJet flight from Manchester to Iceland when he began swigging from a gin bottle he'd smuggled on board, reports Edinburgh Live. Not long after that, the drunk man from Chester, started harassing fellow passengers and cabin crew. Local media reports that Flaherty made romantic advances towards a female passenger. When she turned him down, he told her to F off and made threats to kill her family. One of those in the cockpit were told of the situation. They locked the cockpit door and diverted the flight, carrying 6 crew and 142 passengers to Edinburgh, Scotland. Flaherty was told by the crew to sit down and behave. Ignoring instructions, he then started eating the electrical parts of his mobile phone, even chewing out the battery. Battery started smoldering. So cabin crew member ran over and put the device in a cup of water to prevent any fire or explosion. EasyJet cabin crew managed to tell Edinburgh Live she was very intimidated by Flaherty's drunken eruption. She was worried that he was going to physically harm her. Flaherty was met by police on the ground and taken to a Livingston police station. The incident actually happened back in 2019, but he was only charged with the crime on Monday. Pled guilty to a string of charges and faces jail time. In his defense, Flaherty's lawyer indicated his outrageous behavior was caused by the mixture of nerve pain medication and alcohol, and probably just a little bit of anger. I didn't know the thing about the batteries. I think that was quick thinking. On his part. So good for the on her part, the stewardess that managed to get the battery into the water there. I wouldn't have thought of that. So, good for her. What a hero. What a brilliant, brilliant hero. So, yeah, good stuff. Well done. Exciting things. In a related story, because, of course, there's a plethora of drunk plane stories. A U.S. woman, yeah, that's right, one of ours, has received the worst start to her day after a drunk passenger on her plane vomited on her hair shortly before takeoff. Passenger on the 8 a.m. flight from Chicago to Baltimore earlier this week captured the immediate aftermath. Cassidy Smith's tweets show a flight attendant wearing rubber gloves and cleaning the sick out of the victim's hair, while the other horrified passengers looked on. Smith said the man who vomited was severely intoxicated and escorted off the plane. Presumably it wasn't in the air. Everyone else asked for the 2 deep planes so the plane could be deep cleaned. The victim used this time to do a deep clean of her own, washing her hair in the restroom with the help of an attendant before returning to the plane. All fresh and clean after she washes her hair in the bathroom sink. She handled this like an absolute champ. I'm very impressed by this. I've been vomited on in my hair before. My sister was drunk and vomited on the back of my head. So, I understand. You know what? I actually did have patience back then. I don't think I would now, weirdly. However, yeah, this is a thing. This is a thing that happens, and you got to be patient because, they are in the drunk state. And the other thing is that, they're, everyone thinks that, drinking at higher altitudes gets you drunk faster, right? However, there's no actual evidence of this. But there are a few factors that can leave you feeling worse after drinking on an airplane. So airplanes pressurize the cabins, right, to ensure passengers are receiving enough oxygen, with pressure falling within the range of 6,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level. Most bodies will adjust to the change, but can result in some mild hypoxia, lower oxygen levels in the blood, which contributes to flyers feeling dried out and jet lagged. I certainly get this. I feel very dry. I'm always so thirsty after a plane. So drink water. It's easy to get dehydrated. Because humidity has fallen significantly in the air. Plan to limit your drinking just in case. You won't get more drunk, but the lack of food and dehydration will make the effect of the altitude stronger. So one drink might actually feel like it's a lot more than one drink. Just have a little extra food if you're going to have the wine. Don't have fizzy alcoholic beverages. It's slightly beer, is cheaper and stuff, but it might actually make you feel drunker faster. Cokes and other soft drinks like that make you feel bloated and gassy. Not pleasant. Might make you feel weird. When in doubt, drink a Bloody Mary, There is one case in a German airline that observed that travelers on its flight consumed nearly as much tomato juice as beer. Researchers used a special lab to recreate the conditions on the airplane and found that the sweet and salty flavors were toned down on an aircraft, making food and drink taste bland, and tomato juice resisted the effects. So there you go. This is your time to do it if you're not always a Bloody Mary person. This could be your chance. Yeah? Don't get drunk in an airplane, because don't vomit on people. That'd be ideal. But if you're gonna, drink a Bloody Mary. When we return, McDonald's stories, because I liked them so much the last time I did them. We have one McDonald's story and several to follow when we return from the break.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about vomiting and drunk behavior on airplanes. Now we're going to McDonald's, where the ice cream machines, notorious for breaking down, are reportedly getting a new device to help keep everything running at a few different locations. Some McDonald's franchises are teaming up with the software company Kitch, which has developed a technology that can detect and correct minor malfunctions with the machines, as well as provide employees with detailed information recording the machine's issues. The device will attach the current machines to ensure the automated cleaning cycle is scheduled properly. It can also correct issues caused by human error, like over or under filing the machine, in accordance to the outlet. Since the device launched in 2019, several McDonald's locations have reportedly implemented it, though McDonald's corporate office cannot confirm its use. Providing a restaurant experience that other customers expect is among our top priorities, says a McDonald's spokesperson. McDonald's Corporation and its franchises are constantly working together to improve and enhance the restaurant experience so that customers can enjoy McDonald's food where and when they want. So if they're not using it yet, they may want to rethink that, as the Shamrock Shake season is about to hit hard. So there you go. If you're an ice cream lover at McDonald's, there may be a fix coming to save us soon. You know, exciting stuff. Just in time for the Shamrock season. And because of this story, I was inspired and I wanted to dive a little deeper. So we're going to share McDonald's employees, share their most memorable story. So current and past employees. So we're going to start out with a terrifying one. So if you have I hope you have a strong stomach here. A girl at my local McDonald's knocked her engagement ring off, and it fell into the deep fryer. She stuck her hand in to get it. Barely made it past the wrist. Her skin was reddish brown and kind of hanging off. It's weird because the skin on that hand looks younger, minus a couple of small scars. I worked at a 24-hour McDonald's when I was younger. It was a Saturday morning at 5 a.m., and all the drunks are coming in before we start serving breakfast. Some guy asked for a medium orange juice, but I accidentally gave him a small. He threw a huge fit and threw the cup at me. And then suddenly everything broke loose. Some guy started screaming at him, punched him in the face, and then there was a huge brawl with both parties' friends. There was blood everywhere. The police came, ambulances, and we had to close the store for over an hour because of an orange juice. I was managing a McDonald's, and it was a long weekend in the tourist area, so we were open 24 hours, although there was really no business after 3 a.m. or so. So on a Sunday morning, 3:30, some girl comes into the drive-thru drunk and orders a bunch of McNuggets. The employee that took the order let me know about the drunkenness. I told the employee to get the drunk girl her nuggets, or tell them that it would take some time to cook. So she pulled out, and we'd bring them in when they're ready. So she pulls her ahead, and I call the cops. A few minutes later, they come to arrest the girl. At this point, they have her handcuffed and face down on the pavement. My employees and I are watching this happen. One of them asks if he can run the nuggets out to the girl. Thinking this would be hilarious, I let him do it. And the cop questioned him, and he told him, and the cop laughs and tells the kid to go back inside the store and carries on arresting the girls. Gets them loaded up in the cop car, but before he takes them to the station, he and his partner sit down in the front seat of the car and finish the poor girl's nuggets. It was hysterical. The next story, when I was in high school, my best friend and I both worked at the same McDonald's at the mall. One Saturday afternoon, after cleaning the counter and whatever else we did to pass the time, we started playing with the Happy Meal toys. The Spider-Man movie had just come out, and the toy was a plush Spider-Man ball, a little smaller than a basketball. We just started throwing it at each other, banking it off the walls and the cash register. Rather quickly, we began to escalate the game. One would dare the other to bank it off the manager's window and land in an ice bucket, off the basket, inside the deep fryer, and then missed the basket. Ball landed in the oil. We never told anyone and continued to deep fry French fries the rest of the day, probably coating them in some sort of cotton plastic goop. So I hope that turns you off of McDonald's for a bit. I was the manager at McDonald's for many years. I have a few good ones, and here's my favorite. It's a busy night. I'm in the office. One of my employees comes in saying that some dude is in the lobby screaming for the manager. So I go out and meet the guy, and it's this old 50-something dude freaking out, drenched in sweat. He starts telling me that he's been chased by a rabid dog for a few blocks and ran into my restaurant to escape. He points out that he has trapped the dog at the entrance to my restaurant, the little vestibule area where you open up the door. Have a little space to wipe your shoes, etc. Look over his shoulder, and sure enough, there's a giant lab of some sort freaking out, possibly rabid. The store had 2 entrances, so I put signs outside both the doors, but we couldn't lock them, as the locks are on the inside. Then called the police, who agreed to send animal control and tell me that this person will arrive in about 20 minutes, and just to keep the dog trapped in that area and to be safe. A few minutes later, 3 customers approached me and asked whose dog it is. These guys are in his 20s and obviously stoned. I gave them the short form, and they asked if they could go take the dog and give it a good home. Read what the police told me and told them no. They started begging, but I kept saying, no, it's not a good idea. Eventually, they realize I'm not caving, and they leave me alone. Go back to work, and a minute or two later, someone in the lobby yells for help. Return to the lobby, and one of the stoners has collapsed and is lying on the floor. Rush to his side, start checking his vitals, and preparing to do CPR. Another customer yells from behind, "Hey, they're stealing the dog." Turn around to check and see that, yes, they are stealing the dog. The man who's collapsed stands up very quickly and runs out the other entrance, joining his friends and the dog as they run down the street. Wish I'd taken a picture of the animal controls officer's face when I told him the story as he arrived after it went down. It was a weird night. Here's another one about kids. I worked at half a McDonald's, half an Amco station with a bunch of high school friends the summer after senior year. One day we had a kid appreciation day or something like that. We had Ronald McDonald clown costume come out and sign stuff for the kid as he passed balloons. Started getting crazy hot. Ronald ran out of balloons. I had to walk to the back of the store to get more. And his fake hair started to light up. Fire broke out. And then the fire department was called. Ronald was fine. Kids were horrified. The restaurant was closed for the next day. He got paid time and a half that day while the store was closed. Pretty sweet deal. That would have been very scary for the kids involved in that situation. So here's the thing. I want to continue with this when we come back from the break because there's a few more that were very funny. And then we'll move into shower thoughts after that. But we do need to take a break. So we'll continue with more crazy McDonald's stories when we come back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, welcome back. Like I said, we're going to continue with a few more McDonald's stories. So the next one, I was a manager at McDonald's. One week I got into a fight with the general manager of our region. He was being quite the jerk. He was based out of my store and his office was located there as well. One night I closed the store with an employee who I happened to be dating at the time. And I was turning the lights out and saying goodnight to the maintenance guy. She pulled me into his office and explained to me that she thought this was the best way to get revenge on my general manager was to sleep together right there on his desk. So they did. And the maintenance guy, she said that she briefed him on the plan. So as soon as the door closed, she turned up the radio and stayed in the he turned up the radio and stayed away from the office. When we were done, I went to say goodnight to him while my girlfriend cleaned up and we went home. A week later, my girlfriend relayed to me that she didn't clean up everything and she left his desk as it was. He worked on it and ate off of it and everything. And I forgave him for being a jerk. Watch your employees, guys. They will do terrible things. I worked at a McDonald's for about 6 months during my senior year of high school. I worked with a kid who was disturbed in the head, and we had to make parfait cups together each morning. It involved us opening a big bucket of yogurt, taking a spoonful, putting it into the cup, and then topping it off with berries for another container. His routine was this: spoonful of yogurt, drop into the cup, lick spoon, berries, repeat. Don't eat the yogurt, guys. A dude came in late on a weeknight, hung out for like 3 hours, drinking milkshakes, kept trying to chat to me, telling me that I should smile more. I didn't understand what he was talking about until he called the store after closing to see me. Said he was attracted to me and wanted to meet up for some fun and friendship. Finally, I realized what was going on. I freaked out, and all I could think is, I'm a good Christian boy, and I don't do that kind of thing. And then I hung up. I worked at the McD's. I worked in Canada, and a girl had explosive diarrhea all over the toilet walls and floor, and drew pictures in it with her fingers. Ended up cleaning it up with a hose, gas mask, and buckets of floor cleaner that I dumped into the floors and walls. And had some guys that would jack off in the urinals. It was the worst. The worst non-bathroom experience, though, was one customer. Complete pain in the butt. She came in with her 2 grandkids one day, ordered 2 Happy Meals without specifying who wanted what, and 1 girl and 1 boy toy. Got the meals, ate half of it, came back and complained that I got the wrong toy to the wrong kid. Picked the toys out of the bag, crossed them in my hands, and dropped them into the opposite bag and said, "There you go, ma'am." She was so mad she wanted to see the manager and tried to get me fired. 2 weeks later, she ordered a burger from me while insulting me the whole time. Not sure if my grill staff was being supportive or was an actual accident, but her bacon strips had bone in it. She chipped a tooth and threatened to sue me personally. Because as we all know, it is the person you're taking the order from fault that something happened to your food that they had nothing to do with. 54-hour hold-in challenge. When I was a manager at McDonald's, I always got stuck working 12-hour days on long weekends because we were located in a tourist town and it was busy as all get out. This particular story takes place on Victoria Long Day weekend in Canada. I was working 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. on a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I was running the kitchen during this time. It was about 9 a.m. on Saturday, and I had to poop. So I asked my assistant to run the show for a few minutes while I go to the bathroom. He said, what a baby for taking time out to poop. Made me a bet that I couldn't hold it until the end of the day. Took the challenge. So confident that I could beat him that I lasted until the end of my shift on Monday, 54 hours later. He took the bet. $20 says you can't hold it in for 54 hours. I was on the honor system for the time away from work. Saturday went all right, although there was a few moments where I just had to stand still and concentrate on not pooping myself. Sunday and Monday were much more difficult. Had the most awful cramps, and on Monday morning around 2:30, I started gloating. I'm going to make it. But then the worst possible thing happened. My boss, head restaurant manager, walked over to me and punched me square in the stomach, and I pooped right there in the middle of the McDonald's kitchen. Although I got to leave early, it didn't make up for the fact that I lost $20. Ended up throwing the pair of pants out and ordering a new pair the next day. I worked at a McDonald's one time at about 11 p.m. There was a big group of 14 to 18 guys sitting on the front patio causing trouble and yelling profanities, making it a pain for our customers to walk in. One of our regular customers, who could be best described as a 40-year-old Aussie Joe Dirt, came through the drive-thru and was furious that he couldn't walk into the store to sit. He told us to pause the security recordings and lock the doors, and we were thinking weird when he came to a screeching halt out front, punched the man right in the face so hard that he backflipped out of his chair and ran back to his car, leaving the massive group of angry guys. They saw us laughing and started to retaliate. One tried to throw a chair through the window, but it rebounded back to him. And after this happened, I heard the guy say, "Man, that glass is strong." We didn't stop recording. We watched the tape many times over in slow motion. Another time I was setting up the store for a morning, changing the bins in the car park, when I noticed that there was a slight chip in the glass fence that surrounds the patio. Watched security guy tape from the previous night and saw two guys pushing 3 shopping carts at running speed, plowing into the glass at no avail. I used to work the closing shift at McDonald's because the restaurant was located across the street from a nightclub. Sometimes you'd get a drunk and scantily clad customers ordering from the drive-thru window, and after the dining hall was closed. There was an incident late night where a couple of young guys wanted to order more than just a Whopper. One said, "How about we pay you some cash if you switch our jeans with your pants? Club won't let us in looking like this." "No thanks, gentlemen," I said. After they left, I laughed, realizing I just refused entrance for 2 guys by keeping my pants on. I worked weekend overnights as a cashier. So naturally, a lot of people that I serve are wasted. One time a woman comes in drunk, trying to order a McChicken. So I pull through and I put it through and gave it to her. She opens the bag and I see her face starts to scrunch up. She starts to cry because she doesn't like McChicken. After that, my favorite moment was about 45 minutes into my scheduled start. My manager says, "Hey, would you mind starting early?" And the toilet in the women's bathroom is clogged. So since I have nothing better to do, I go to work. I look back and see the brown walker seeping from underneath the door. And I say, no. It took me about a half an hour to clean a couple of mock buckets to fully clean that out. A similar incident happened when someone pooped on the floor. Okay, so that's actually it. We don't have time for any more. So thank you for listening to the Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask you, please remember to subscribe and write a nice review and rate the episode. It really helps us. So please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you again for listening, and have a great night and happy Valentine's Day.